Yeah. So on another topic, can you explain to me what the live, for all people, the live update campaign page that you are working on or developing? What is this?
Oh wow, you've been you spotted that, huh? Like that's
I
the
take
little site.
notes.
All right. Hey, good job on your research. So like literally, I still play and run D&D. I have like a couple of groups, a couple of times a week, and one of them, a friend of mine, is running the Dragonlance campaign using D&D Beyond, and he was like, I really dislike that you can't see a quick overview of how of the status of each of the characters. I can't see how many hit points, what their AC is, unless I'm in an encounter. A lot of the times, I don't want to be in an encounter, so I'm like, I'm not up to anything this weekend. I'll fix that. And so I put together a JavaScript that kind of just runs as an overlay on the D&D Beyond site using the browser extension that just kind of fixes that, because it's just something that I personally felt was a shortfall of the website for quite a long time. It was on my list of things that we needed to deal with before I was laid off. I had a big document of like, this is the stuff that we need to address, and that was one of the things on there. So I was like, I've got a couple of days spare, I'll do it myself.
And so, so it's on GitHub right now.
Yeah, there's a browser extension called Tamper Monkey, but there's a load of others that do the same. They're well known, and they allow you to execute an additional script that modifies somebody else's website within your browser. It's not hacking; it's just changing the experience within your own browser to suit your own needs. It's taking the data that's already on the page and just doing different stuff with it.
This is something that I fell into a rabbit hole about last 2 weeks, where I discovered GitHub, Python, and a bunch of other things. I stumbled into Pinocchio, which is a brand new self-enclosed browser, where it does everything self-enclosed, and it has been it's hard, and this is going to go off on a little tangent, but it's for me, as someone for me, I don't have the computer engineering background as you do, but I'm on the opposite end. I was in electronics retail, so I worked at Radio Shack in 19. I sold my first computer I ever sold was a 386 Tandy. To give you an idea how old in there, and I was selling computers up until 2018.
One of my first ever jobs was working at Tandy, so I hear you.
Exactly. So I've been in and around electronics for a long time, so I've always embraced it. I have computers that have cost, I have a $3,000 computer now. I have a 3080 Ti for a graphics card. I know the technical jargon, but I don't. When it gets to the scripting and all this stuff, I was just like, oh, this is like going back to school, trying to understand. And even then, finding somebody like finding Pinocchio, like, oh yeah, no, we took all this and made it easy for you. I'm like, oh, thank God. Because trying to mess with these scripts, a lot of people don't realize whenever I see the AI debate, like Midjourney is evil and ChatGPT is evil, we got to bring down these juggernauts. And I'm like, you have no idea what's been going on within the community. The fact that there are all of these AI variations, they're doing all these different things. And so whenever I see these people talking about the polarizing black and white evil good of AI, I look at it as like, as someone who's been technically minded, it's hard for me to not feel that this debate is a pinpoint of this much larger tapestry, and people are looking at this one thread of this tapestry, and they don't want to look at the big picture, because when you look at the big picture, it is so large that it's overwhelming, and you realize that you don't have all the information, you don't have all the data, and it's hard to make an argument. But when you look at it from a polarizing black and white perspective, it is. So the question is now, it's like, right now there has been a rise, and it's tapering a lot. I'm not saying that often, of this just knee-jerk reaction, this knee-jerk hatred for AI in a general, in a just a broad category within the role-playing game, the publishing tabletop game community, even with the board game community. And some people latch on that, and they immediately vilify anybody who even mentions AI in a tolerable light, despite, and it seems like for me, and as I've said, it feels like these companies are saying AI bad, and then they get the street cred, and they're like, okay, so they're distracted by this. So let's look at this technology and see what we can actually learn from it. What are your thoughts on this? Because as I can easily tell, you're someone who can see the whole tapestry. You clearly are someone that probably has a way broader vision than most of the people that are talking online right now.
I mean, so I'm going to straight out tell you my personal position and philosophy, because that's important to the discussion, which is, I've been working with AI, I've been talking to research professors and senior engineers at Google and Amazon about what we can do to use AI ethically in the tabletop role-play industry. And that's a core thing that everybody that's operating at these levels, whether it's like senior research scientists or whether it's senior engineers at these big corporations, are really interested in, is how can we do this ethically? Now, you take it back to what we're saying about art, and you're right, everybody looks at things. I don't want us to get too much into the way politics works, but it's the same deal. Everything needs to be boiled down to this view is good, the other views are bad, and things just get lumped together. There's a lot of AI use on the internet already, right? Like whether it's trying to find you the best deal for your car insurance quote, whether it's trying to help you with the spelling or grammar of a letter you're writing. These are all tools that are there and are starting to be embedded into things. The fuss within the last few months of the fact that Adobe added all these AI tools into Photoshop as core tools so that they just become part of people's workflow. I think it came into the sphere of tabletop role-play games when you have artists being personally affected, where you have stories where people are saying, hey, I had this job making art for this game, and look what I do, look what I create, and I have fans who are fans of my art, and now I don't have that job because I've been replaced because somebody can make similar art for free using an AI tool. And that plays on emotions, that plays on fears that we all have of being irrelevant, and it plays on a very real situation that we're all finding ourselves in now of it's becoming harder and harder to actually earn a living and pay the bills. I mean, to even do so whilst doing something that you like and you enjoy and have a passion for is actually pretty rare. So yes, it's become a massively emotive issue because people can identify with someone having what they care for and what they love taken away from them by something. And we're always told that AI and machines would be there to take away the drudgery, right? Take away the mundane tasks. So, then finding that all of the money that billionaires have is being put into creating tools that will take away art from people. And that's what we're always sold, right? That's the thing, that people would be free to pursue arts and creative things rather than mundane drudgery, and it's become the other way around. That is the emotive core of the issue that people are experiencing. So there are ways and means, and this we could talk for hours on this one specifically, but there are ways and means of addressing a lot of this ethically. That
probably may end up doing that. We may have to do a second one where we're just talking about this.
Sure. I'm happy to do so. If you want at any point, it's certainly something that I'm very aware of. Talking about positioning within, websites and tools. There's loads of them out there. You look at It's a great example. I can't remember the website at the moment. I can look it up later and let you have it for a link on the video. That has an AI tool that will generate a city map for you. And it's not stealing anybody else's creative ideas. It's not stealing anybody's art. The person that built it created all of the actual art resources for it themselves and then built the tool. And you can literally just tweak the parameters and bump, change the size of your city, and there it is. That's a great tool, right?
I ask people these questions. I have a series of questions I ask people whenever they talk about AI. Because I made is controversial to an extent, but not. Where I said I'll never use AI as a way of circumventing people. Right, I'm not going to use AI to not pay my artists. I have a book called Amethyst, which has always been synonymous with a singular artist. And I told him, like, look, you use technology. You're a proven artist. You're Hugo nominated. You've been doing this for 30 years. I am not going to be your watchdog if you wish to implement, because he uses Photoshop. He uses a Wacom tablet, and he always keeps it up to date. So I told him straight up, I'm not going to be your police dog. I'm going to pay you for these illustrations as long as they're at your style, they match everything else. I don't really care how you get there. And I said that I was like, I don't, because he's proven. It's not like hiring some guy who does AI art and say, I'm paying you for AI art, so my conscience is clean, I'm paying someone. I've worked working with the same person for 3 or 4 years. His illustrations, one of his illustrations is behind me. And if I get an illustration that looks exactly like that, how he goes about that, I don't really care how the sausage is made. I never been to. And I'm a person that, being someone who's technically minded, jumped on this bandwagon and saw all this cool stuff, both with ChatGPT, and I started playing around with ChatGPT so much, not connected to my writing in my books, but I decided to write a novel just to see what it was like, and I picked up all these patterns. And I made a joke to people that I can never say the word testament anymore because it's ChatGPT's favorite word. It loves dark contrasts, verdant fields, and testaments. It just loves it. It just loves using it in every sentence. To the point whenever I saw a paragraph somebody had written in regards to wine country that's completely unrelated, and they had stark contrast and a testament in the same paragraph, and I was just like, yeah, that's AI, And it's one of those situations where I'm not going to just slave it to someone. I know what to look for, and the same thing with digital artwork. I know what to look for. So Nick and I always had these conversations. But I had about 3 people got really angry with me about the fact that I would let established artists that I'm paying determine for themselves how they wanted to implement digital technology, including AI, and that was somehow that was still wrong to them. And for me, I always said the fact that you're talking about the Adobe Photoshop, and there's this thing where you can expand out the image. And I said, okay, if you expand that image out, that means 40% of that image is AI. Is that an AI generated image? Does that justify outrage? And a sensible person's like, well, clearly not, because it's simply extrapolating the image. I go, yeah, but we're talking about the black and white of AI being bad. How is that different than, say, taking inspiration from an AI image? And these are conversations I have with people, and unfortunately, more often than not, they respond by anger, blocking, unfriending, rather than trying to engage the conversation, because it doesn't fall into that evil good black and white dichotomy.
I mean, I think we're moving more onto the way that social media works and approaches people and engages people. It's designed to create outrage and engagement because, sadly, social media engines and all of the algorithms understand that conflict drives more engagement than stuff that people like. Let's not go into that side of stuff, but in terms of stuff that AI does well, there's a pretty famous experiment in AI circles about how do we prove that these things are not just copying things they've seen, and how it's transformative work. So the puzzle that was set was, okay, explain Einstein's theory of relativity as if it was written by Shakespeare, and boom, did it. And in the language of Shakespeare, because it understood what that is from looking at that, can do it. And that kind of transformative work is things that AI are very good at. But that, again, could be somebody's job doing that, and it's an art thing. So I personally, I wouldn't do something like that for a professional product. I am aware of a number of companies within tabletop roleplay industry who use AI as prototyping tools, right? And that they need some art for a page, and they'll be like, okay, just as like a placeholder, you can just in seconds come up with something, drop it on there. That's the kind of thing that we need. Is that going to work? Workshop it through. Great. Now we create the brief for the artist based on that. Like we said, there's a lot of emotive stuff. I personally feel that there is a future for AI in the tabletop industry, but I don't think it should be used to create content that we're then selling. That's my personal thoughts on the matter.
Yeah.
I think it can excel at tools for people who need it. I just look at a lot of my own personal use cases of things that I've looked at. Being able to add really good quality descriptions for screen readers for art, that's sadly lacking in a lot of digital platforms. To say, hey, here's this piece of art, and be able to describe it properly and well to somebody with a screen reader, that's something AI can do really well. That's great use of that tool, so that anybody can drop art on there and it can analyze it and come up with a good description. Being able to create tools that help game masters run their game when they're stuck. I mean, when the internet first started doing fun pages for stuff, right, where it's like, oh, you want a list of, have you ever used fancy name generator? Right?
I use it all the time.
Right?
Oh, right. I used to use it all the time. It's one of those situations where I try to go for names but for me, I have to admit, I was using fantasy name generator, then I would switch to ChatGPT by going like, I would load my entire book and go, okay, I need a name that merges these two types of ideology. And I could do it myself. I could spend an hour doing the research, but it was just like, just give me 35, 40 names and I'll look through and I go, and that's me. My conscience is clean when it comes to, like, for me, I use ChatGPT to get me over a hump. I hit a wall and I'm like, okay, I need to get over this wall. I need to figure this out, or stuff like that. I can see that. But yeah, fantasy name generator was my bag for years. I still use it on occasion.
Yeah, sure. There is a very real concern amongst people within AI circles about the proliferation of AI learning models that all are now ingesting information created by the models, and rather than it creating diversity of content and art, what it's actually going to do, if you extrapolate forwards, is create this homogenization where everything kind of becomes the same. And, so there very much is a need for human creativity. It's very difficult for such things to conceive of something that they've not seen. So there absolutely is a need for human creativity. I think over the next 5 to 10 years, that's going to be a huge theme within AI and the way it moves forwards.
This is one of the reasons why I dropped. I've dropped Midjourney myself. I don't look at Midjourney anymore in my ChatGPT uses. It's because it was turning out ideas, but I started noticing homogeny. And maybe you know this, and maybe I'm wrong. I started hearing stories about corporations that were trying to exclude people and replace them with AI when it comes to replacing them in the creativity field. But then within a year, discovering that it wasn't a really good system, and then bringing some of these creatives back. Is that true in some circles? I've been hearing stories about them trying to cut humans out of the equation and replacing with AI in certain areas of creativity, and realizing that it's not very good at this, and they have to bring these people back.
So, yeah, I mean, if you look at I mean, you're probably very aware what happened to Lynn Cadega and other reporters who are very famous within the tabletop roleplay space, let go from their jobs at Gizmodo and replaced by AI tools for writing articles. Now, here's one of the core problems there is you're reading an article by a good professional reporter and they'll make sure they use all of their knowledge to be able to put in things that are relevant to that article, but also things that are relevant to what's going on at the time within the industry, and it becomes engaging and interesting and addresses the actual concerns and interests of the person that's reading it. When you're looking at AI content, it's going to quite literally do what it's told, and you end up with a whole load of articles that have got a lot of the same words in there, and you find that after you've read a bunch of them, you're like, this is just the same stuff, just spat out with the words rearranged, right? And that's the problem that you're talking about there, where it kind of gets this homogenous thing, and people, being brought back in to work on stuff because those companies seeing, hey, in the short term, and this is a massive capitalism issue, but in the short term, they make a lot more money because they've hugely reduced the costs and they've still got the same amount of income. But over time, the quality's gone down, so the income starts to drop as people go look to other sources, and then they realize they've got a problem. Shifting off that side of stuff, because it can get very emotive around the political side of things and people's beliefs around a lot of things. I think that going back to what you asked about role-play games, there absolutely is an available future for us of reducing the barrier to entry again, almost like a new renaissance for doing that with a, you look at the way that Steam addressed video games, or when Netflix came out for streaming videos, and these things kind of go cyclical, and then everybody goes, that's a great idea, and introduces their competitive systems, and they just get apart, and then new things come in. So I'm certain that there's a way of being able to step things up and make things easier for people to be able to both play, run, and create. And that is, I'm not talking about this too much right now because I can't, but that's what I'm now working on.
So there's more things to come. For me, one thing I will state is that I did eventually find someone to do a Roll20 adaptation for my books, and he is using AI to write the scripts for him. And once again, you're talking about something where it's just like, inevitably that people can say that could be problematic, but he's like, I'm paying this person for a service, and he's just like, I can do this, but I can accelerate my product by using AI. And it's hard for me not to do that because I don't have $8,000 to pay someone professional to adapt my system to Roll20. So it's very easy to pay someone to employ AI in their arsenal to create this adaptation. And so it's I can understand the fact that in many ways AI could be a tool that helps strip down these barriers to entry. But
I think there's a different direction. And I'm not going to go into commercially sensitive things that could become a proprietary thing, but I don't think that using AI to write code is the way that we make things easier for independent creators to have digital tools for their games.
Okay.
I've always said, hey, this is, when I got laid off from Wizards of the Coast, I was like, I looked around at what could I be doing, and I looked, and with the experience that I've got, I could have jumped into senior producer or senior program manager or other roles. I went to Evil Genius because I wanted to stay in this industry, and I wanted to be able to create things that would help make stuff better. I learned a lot through that. I just recently turned down a very lucrative interview for a very lucrative position for a company that would have earned me like more money than I've ever seen in my life, but it's not what I want to do with myself. I promised myself that my personal mission now is to be able to create something that is going to make the tabletop industry better for everybody. And I've come up with a lot of ideas on tools and processes. I've just a little sort of side project that I'm working on that's not my main thing, is this kind of idea I've been gradually processing over the last couple of years of what if there was a significantly better way of being able to go from creating your content to digitizing it? What if there was more standards around that? You know, a lot of people use Adobe tools, but there are others out there as well. And where you do that, what about creating your content? What are the standards that are used? I've spent a lot of time working with writers, editors, artists, layout people, graphic designers. They all have their own challenges. Working as in a production role as a producer and as a manager, I've seen what all of those issues are, and I believe there are ways of being able to address a lot of that to help people. I spend time in design spaces on social media, you know, trying to help people as well who are asking questions about how do I do this? How do I go about contracting an artist? How much should they be paid? What's the standard contract looks like? And I think there's a lot can be done to help people that doesn't involve using AI tools to build stuff for them. It involves just helping people.
But for me, it's difficult. This is where I try not to get adversarial on this. Where until some of these things happen, until we get that information, it's a lot of publishers have to go with what the tools that they have at their disposal. Like there were situations where are we patient enough to look for the hopefully what could be a pie in the sky solution to help bring publishers into this new age where they can make money and do it so ethically, or do we surf through and we filter a bunch of publishers that don't have the tools, don't have the means? And what I get worried about as a publisher myself is what I feel, and I hate to say this word, unwarranted vilification for using tools that they have as a means to survive. And that's what I worry about, the fact that golden age we're talking about, when people are talking about the fact that I prefer it this way, I go, yeah, but there's going to be a lot of us that are going to go out of business because we're not allowed to use these tools, and you want this tapestry of this marketplace, which is incompatible to the way we do business. So for me, it's hard for me to vilify companies that try to use these tools because of the information that they are using. Looking at the tapestry, looking at the market, looking at the spectrum in front of them, it's hard for me to vilify or judge them, especially when they're one or two man operations, and they're trying to survive in this marketplace. And because I feel we're going to see by the end of the year more and more smaller role playing publishers that are just going to fold up.
Hey, so another skill that I picked up over time is I'm really good at Photoshop as well, right? I wouldn't consider myself an artist, but I'm great at working with design elements and being able to work at laying stuff together and blending things and all those kind of stuff. But sure, I could jump into an AI art generation tool, build something, pull it into that, and then just spend like maybe an hour or two just sort of cleaning it all up and addressing some of the issues with it. And I would have a top tier piece of art that would cost me a couple of $1,000s to commission. So I can see, all right, I would never do that for something that I'm going to sell. That's a personal philosophy. I'm not going to tell other people what they should or shouldn't do, but I also know people who are small publishers that are really struggling because they're looking at, hey, if I'm going to put my game out there and it's going to be a PDF and it's going to be on drive-through and they're going to take 30%, 35% of my revenue from that, I'm probably going to sell, I don't know, at $10 a copy, I might sell 100 copies. They can't afford to spend that money. So they're faced with the choice of, do I do it and use the AI art? And probably, realistically speaking, they might use AI for an editor tool as well to be able to review their text and make sure it's all in the same tone and so forth. I absolutely can see why people do this, because their choice is, I do this to get a piece of work done within the amount of money I have, or I don't do it. So I understand why people are doing it.
We're seeing also, as we were talking about before, the fact that in the 80s, you could get by when we look at classics, the Redbox, the Tarzorian games, GURPS. And nowadays, the public, and this is, we were talking about Kickstarter as well, the fact that Kickstarter, you need to have almost a fully fleshed product with a lot of balance, because big companies have set that tier so high that the public is now expecting that minimum. And so for me, I walked away from trying to do board games because that barrier to entry was so high, because they they want the finished product completely with prototyping. And I'm like, you are like, a role-playing game is different. I can run a Kickstarter for a role-playing game with $500, maybe $800 put aside, but a board game you're looking at $10,000-$15,000 to get that Kickstarter going. So role-playing has a slightly better barrier. I'm lucky in the fact that I've been doing this for 20 years. I have a massive portfolio of artwork that I have commissioned that I get to play with and pull and reuse whenever I can. And even my Affinity game, I maybe commissioned 4 additional illustrations and just used just whatever tools we can to shortcut it. This was back in 2018. We didn't have AI, but we just find whatever tools we can have to make it look stylistic without having to have a massive amount of artwork commissioned. But I worry now the fact that people now insist on these extremely high quality games that can only be produced by these big companies. And I'm like, yeah, we could have made an inexpensive game that didn't have to rely on these high quality images. But it seems like people are saying, no, you have to now compete with Mongoose, with Paizo, with these full color images. And all these independent publishers are like, unless we employ AI, we have no capacity to compete. And then when they do, people scream at them and say, you're horrible for using AI. And then we look at it and go, then we're done.
All right, two things. One, we're seeing companies terraforming Mars. They've openly talked about the fact that, like, yeah, we've used AI to generate all of these art assets for our board game. Boom, boom, boom. This is what we've done here. Look, see, done that. Big, lots of people getting upset about it, and lots of people still went and bought it. I'm not going to say whether they're right or wrong to do that. That's a decision that they made.
I remember saying
but they clearly stated what they were doing. And if we're talking about ethics, stating what you've done, how you've done it, is definitely better than hiding what you've done. Yeah. So that's the thing. And people can then make an informed decision on what they want to do. Do they want your product or not? Second thing is, that leads into a point that I've been making for a couple of years to people that I've talked to, which often takes them by surprise, which is the role of a printed book, a printed rule book, has changed within the TTRPG industry. This was a big theme in some of the stuff that I was articulating when I was at Wizards to people, which is, there is a lot of future in digital. There was a bit of a panic when D&D Beyond came over, because the sales of physical books have been dropping book on book, and they were looking at what they're doing wrong. What are we doing wrong? Why is this going wrong? Why are we not selling as many books as we used to? And the answer was simple. They were selling significantly more books than ever before, but a higher percentage of them were digital only. And So the overall money that was being earned was higher, but they were selling fewer physical books. But when you look at things like the alternative covers, I know a lot of people who collect those books, and the amount of people I know who have got them on their shelves in pristine condition because they don't open them on the table. Even if we're playing in person, they might just get it out, just like have a quick look at it through, but then they'll use digital tools for for actually building their character, and then maybe print it out as a PDF. I'm going to position to you that the role of the book is changing to being a treasured collectible rather than being the primary source for the rules.
All right. Like I said, that all being said, ultimately it comes down to, I've always been a person that's like, if I could just create mechanics, because I'm a writer, so that's my contribution. If I could say, you know what, I'm not going to put any artwork anymore because I can't afford it, so I'm not going to go AI, so I'm just going to run the text. And if I felt there was, someone's like, oh yeah, just give me the rules. I don't care about the pictures, because at the end of the day, we're a role-playing game. We're not constantly looking at the pretty pictures. We're interacting with a group. I would totally do that. But I also know the fact that my color books sell better than the older ones.
For sure.
And it's one of those situations where, yeah, and for me, I would be ecstatic to see people embracing what the spirit of gaming is. In many ways, this is one of the reasons why I don't even use Roll20 that much, because I'm like, no. I want to see people's faces, maybe play some music tracks, but I don't need any other visual cues, because that's all that's maybe I'm old school. Maybe people are, yeah, but I like seeing the dragon on a digital dungeon and seeing my guy over. I go, yeah, but I'm old enough where I played the old Rogue. People talk about games called roguelikes. That whole term is based on an old text game called Rogue, where you were a little star that fought a D, and then you hit the D over and over, and then the D would vanish or you would vanish, and then you just kept on going. That was Rogue. And that's the reason, like, it's a roguelike. The entire industry of roguelikes is based on this very old procedurally generated game that was all just through ASCII art.
I used to play that at university when I was supposed to be coding. So yeah. And
so
the same with MUDs, right? My first introduction to online gaming, playing MUDs, and it was all text based. And if there was, there wasn't even like a map. But I think in fact, I'm pretty certain that this is going to continue to become better understood, that physical printed books and all of the other bits that go with it, whether it's pieces of card as a DM screen, whether it's nice cloth maps, other props, figures. We're seeing a huge rise in the popularity and amount of money in figures and terrain for playing in person. And books are moving more towards that, being a collectible, being like, that's why that's the reason why the art is so much more desired. Yeah, when we were in the 90s, and it's book, I've got books downstairs that literally they're held together by sellotape, right? With tape all over them, trying to hold the spine together, maybe staples in them, because they were used so much. And I was the person that had the rule book, and we got it out every time we played the game. People would be flipping through it. There are post-its in that book with, like, to be able to, for the relevant pages, and notes on there where, we looked up online what a clarification was for a rule and stuck that in there and all sorts. Nobody does that with books anymore because they're so pretty, right? They don't want to mess them up. So the role of that book has changed. It's not the primary source for understanding the rules where people flip through. I'm talking generalization. That's definitely the direction things are moving, and have already started to do so. Using PDFs and being able to just flip through them and being able to do a word search is huge for people. But like art, aphantasia is a thing, right? People who actually, you described on something, they cannot create an image in their head. Like, the real struggle with role-playing games. So being able to play a game where the art's there and they can be shown what it is, that's huge for them. At the same time, my personal preference, I've got a very good imagination. I prefer to go absolutely just theatre of the mind, my personal preference.
Yeah.
Being able to serve up digital tools, digital products to complement the physical collectible is where we're going to me. And not just, I've got a PDF and it's the same as the book, and I've then created it on Roll20 and it's the same as the book. They can be different mediums. If you look at the way that Hollywood has learnt that when you're adapting a book, you don't just tell the story that's in the book, you use your different medium to make the most of it. Granted, they don't always do a good job of that, but you use the different medium to its and use the strengths of it to create that. And I don't think we've hit that with digital yet.
Yeah. So again, so we ran for 2 hours.
Yeah. Right.
I always figured that whenever we have simulating conversations, it always runs long. I remember whenever we call up Jamie Stegmeyer from Skullmeyer Games, we do an interview with them. He's like, I can give you 20 minutes. It's like, okay. And then he comes on and we talk for an hour and a half. And I always think like the 20-minute thing was like, okay, conversation runs really crappy. He can go, well, my time is up. I told you it was 20 minutes, but he was like, no, I can keep going because I only say the 20 minutes to people when I want to end the conversation early. So this has been a pleasant. I may have to split this one in half, just so people can digest it. I know that you're dealing with technology, dealing with AI and so forth. Like I said, it's a very emotive topic. And that's slightly enough. I was like, once we started talking, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to bring this up because this has always been something that, for me, like I said, it's hard for me to vilify people in this industry. And that's how I am in general. Whenever I see people going like, if you like outside of certain things, I mean, if you're anti-vaccine or something like that, that's a different story entirely. But when and I have numerous artists that are my friends, and I can feel for them. Oddly enough, I have a large circle of friends who are in the voice acting community.
Yeah.
And whenever I try to bring up the outrage to them, a lot of them are like, yeah, it's amazing that now they're getting angry. And that was kind of his point, the fact that, like, yeah, we've had this problem for 3 years. No one has gotten angry publicly. It was only when the visual artists got hit that suddenly people started caring. Our careers had already been gutted, and they got gutted 2 years ago. And so I'm like, yeah, I feel for that. And so, like, for me, when I talk to my voice actor friends, it's hard for them to feel supreme sympathy because they've been screaming about this for a very long time.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like, and when I look at certain other artists, they're like, and I worked at conventions, like fan conventions, and I had to be the table head for the Artist Alley panel. So we had 3, not just the regular people from the Artist Alley, we had 3 celebrity artists. Andy Poon, John Gallagher, these people who work in Hollywood, they worked on TV shows. Yeah. And I asked them, because this was last year, so AI was on the hot topic, and I was just like waiting for them to go on this hatred rant. And I was like shocked when they're like, it's we went through Photoshop, we went through this is another tool. And John Gallagher was just like, this is all about money. This is about selling Midjourney for $16 million. This is all this is about. At the end of the day, I was expecting this vilification, and instead I got this idea like, it is ultimately, it's we don't like the fact that it's being used to supplement us, but as someone who loves technology in general, I'd like to be promise of what it could be as a tool in the arsenal, but unfortunately, like everything else, it got corrupted into being a tool to circumvent us. But I was surprised I didn't get this unanimous vilification. In fact, there was no dissenting opinion. Everyone was talking about it in much more of a tolerant light, and I was just like, that's so weird. Like, these people who are in this industry, I thought would be much more about that outrage. And yet when I talk with artists, especially artists I hire, they're like, I go, yeah, I know about it, I'm not a big fan or something like that, but the vilification doesn't seem to come from, like, I get some of that, but from all my artist friends, I don't see it. There's such a tempered response from them, which I thought was very interesting.
So just go back to what I said earlier about social media being a way that we consume news now rather than watching TV or reading newspapers. And social media platforms, pretty much all of them, have algorithms that are designed to generate engagement, right? And engagement is primarily driven by conflict. So they literally go out of their way, these platforms, to put dissenting opinions in front of people that to be able to generate that argument and polarize those discussions. It's a big social problem, if you ask me, and one that people do and spend hours and weeks trying to get to the bottom of how we solve it. And it's all happening because people want to make more money, right? Outrage, clicks, drive ad revenue, makes more money for people. That's the end of the day what it's all about. Somebody wants to make more money, therefore they're doing something that adversely impacts other people and not caring about it. Whether artists themselves are that bothered, some of them really are, especially at a more I'm not going to say amateur level, at a less recognized level. Certainly when I talk to artists that aren't well known, who are great artists, and they're looking to be able to say, hey, look, that art that is used as a $4,000 piece of art for a cover, I can do that, but no one's going to pay me to do it because I'm not one of the recognized names that would do that. So I've got a choice. I can either try and say, hey, I'll do it for like $2,000 maybe, at which point people are like, okay, you're not as good then because you're charging less money, or what are their options? So
I can see us totally diving into another topic about economics, because as someone who has dealt with economics, I'm a person, I always remember one of Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares, and he was criticizing somebody's prices being high during a tight economy. Like, I have to make more money to survive, so I have to raise prices. Like, no, you're not going to get anybody. You need to lower prices. And for me, I've been seeing two schisms with artists in the community. I've been seeing artists that are like, okay, so how much is this? They're like, oh, it's $1,000. I'm like, holy crap, are you kidding me? $1,000 for an interior illustration? And some guys has a really high quality stuff. This is before AI too. And he's just like, no, I'll do it for $80. I go, no, that's fine. I go, well, why are you charging so much? Your quality seems to be matching up. I go, yeah, because I'm going to get a lot more commissions and I'll stay and work. I may not be, and that's kind of how I look at if some artists want to stay relevant. I think you have to get past that barrier. I go, well, I can pay for Midjourney, but this guy's really good and he's charging half as much as the standard going rate. My conscience is clean. I can pay this guy's art, and yeah, he's expensive, but they also know how to be competitive. And I think that there's an unfortunate situation that comes into play where suddenly I think a lot of artists might be able to get competitive as long as they understand who they're competing up against. And it's an unfortunate thing where, for me, I've been bashing my head the fact that I have certain going rates that I pay for artwork, and I've been seeing more and more artists suddenly sending me quotes that are astronomically high, and I don't know why these numbers are high. And some of them upset because they have to compete with AI, and I thought, that seems counterintuitive because I can't afford you anymore.
I mean, there's, so many people, when they say, I want to get into the tabletop role-play gaming industry, my first answer is, are you certain? And whether it's art, whether it's writing, whether it's game design, I'm like, because here's the thing, you will not get rich working in this industry. Yeah. Pretty much everybody I've worked alongside is there because it's their passion and it's what they wanted to do. And they acknowledge that, like, I took to be able to work in D&D, I took a pay cut down to 25% of my existing salary, right?
Yeah.
Made paying the bills tough for a while. I was able to make that back up as I progressed, as I got better at what I was doing and knew more
Prove
people.
yourself, yeah.
And yeah, in many ways, in many ways. And I now find myself in a position where I have options that I could go back to other industries with all the things I've learned, and I could earn a lot of money. I wouldn't be happy. That's not what I want to do. I want to stay in this industry, and I want to use the skill, if at all possible. I want to use everything I've learned to be able to just make things that I have a passion for. And if I can do that and pay the bills,
Yeah.
And have enough money left over to be able to go to the seaside a couple of times a year, I'm happy.
Yeah, so, I'm in the exact same boat. Whatever people, I've run panels with people ask for advice, and I say like for me, I was lucky. I was grassroots. I started this whole thing in 2006, so now I've got to the point where I can make a career out of it because I have 10 years of recognition and name brand to go along with it. I was able to release Ultra Modern 5 5-6 months after the OGL got released, and so at that point, there was no non-fantasy book on the market. And so I was able to nail that market. And so I went on a wine trip with my wife, and I was looking at it going, oh, wow, I went copper. I in like 6 hours. I got silver in a day. I got gold in a week. This whole vacation got paid for. I just made $5,000 in a week. And suddenly I was like, maybe I can do this as a career. But it would still be 2 years after that before I decided to start off. And it generated that. As the people ask me, what's your advice? I go, well, you have to start small. You have to understand that this is not something like you may never get to that level. You have to understand the risks. And then, of course, the second thing I say is that, well, marry a bookkeeper. If you marry an accountant, then like I said, I always thought I'd marry like another artist, somebody in the creative industry. It turns out marrying a bookkeeper was such a good idea. Yeah, having that stability, I was like, because my income, I think, like I said, I'm living off of writing as a profession, but it is so unpredictable, and unfortunately, I'm currently on a downswing, and I'm concerned right now because I don't know if it's going to go back up. Like it's been going up and down for 4 years. I know every single time it might not go back up again. In fact, last year I was expecting a high span, and I got a lump, and that lump means that I'm lower than I usually am. So I'm really concerned that I'm not going to get that spike again. And when you look around the industry, I look at it and going, I really hope that high is coming. Otherwise, I gotta pick up a backup profession like welding.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I look what's going on with the gaming industry. Gaming industry works very much the way the film industry does. It's all on venture capitalists, and are they investing in the thing that's going to be cool? And you make a video game, it takes 5 years, and it comes out, and it costs 25 million to make, and then brings in 70 million. Great, a large chunk of that goes back to the people who invested it in the first place, and then the studio's back in the position of trying to convince them to invest in the next project. And if they don't, then we now see what's just happened, which is loads of layoffs.
And things are unpredictable. I just hit the news. This person made this game on Steam, and she's a wonderful person. Seems to me she made a really good game. She released her game after a passion project of spending years working on it, only for EA to drop 11 games on this on one day on Steam, and kicked her right off the trending list. And she was very distraught. And now, thankfully, that's gone viral. So I think a lot more people are looking at her game. But you could have something like that happen and just get pushed out. And you, of course, right now, of course, you're dealing with, we haven't been talking about it for obvious reasons, that you had expectations of a certain direction of your career. And now you're like, oh, I guess it's going in a different direction. And you can't, you were predicting that 2024 would be this. Maybe you did predict it, or maybe you didn't. My point is that there was probably a sub point where you thought 2024 was going to be different than what it is right now.
Oh yeah, I mean, I had huge ideas about where things were going, what I was doing with my career, what I was going to be building, the impact that can have, all of those things. All I'll say about why I stepped away from Evil Genius Games was there's a difference in ethics between myself and the CEO, and I'll leave it at that. Yeah. discussion and speculation out there. I received threats from a lawyer, so I don't really want to go back to that.
Like I said,
I'm not
we're not going to talk. I was just referring to just the fact
yeah,
that you had your first, you had a life course.
Absolutely, and I'd planned things around that, and then I felt that I had to because of things that happen outside of my control. I felt I either completely compromised my own beliefs or change things, and that's meant that yes, it's massively changed where I'm going with my career and what I'm doing.
Do you feel energized that you can do something by yourself, like that maybe now it's time for you to be you're not answering to anyone, like this is now your time to shine?
Yeah, it's right now I'm a bundle of energy and a lot of focus. Right, I'm very neurodiverse, but one of the things that is that I'm not happy unless I'm the best at what I'm doing, and that applies to pretty much everything that I do. Right, so when you look at the whole, what do you mean? You're good at being a product manager and organizing stuff, and you can do all of these other skills and everything. Teaching people courses on how to do leadership, and we're like, how can you do all of these things? And I'm like, well, I just deep dive on stuff. I learn. I'm 52 years old, and my brain is always in learning mode. Anytime I'm leading a team, one of the first things that I tell that team is, look, there's going to be times where I'm wrong. Tell me. If you think there's a better way of doing something, tell me. I want to learn, and I want us to be the best that we can. And we don't do that by buffing my ego in some way. We do that by working together and teaching each other what we know and what we find out. And what is the best way of doing something now might not be the best way of doing something tomorrow. So let's just move forwards and be able to change. And that's how I live my professional life and my personal life.
Yeah, I'm 100% in agreement. When in 2015, I was working at Staples, and I was the #1 salesman of extended warranties in the country.
Oh.
I sold, extended warranties, electronics, extended warranties. I sold 2,400 warranties in a single year. And I thought this was going to be my career. I was like, you know what, maybe the writing career is too unpredictable. This company loves me, and I can become a manager, reliable income, back in vacation, and so forth. And then 2 years later, having that bridge burned underneath me, and having that completely abandoned simply by a shift of hierarchy and a shift in direction, and I was just like, why am I slaving my life with that? It's like you get a job working for a big company for job security, and then there's no job security. So why not do what do you want to do? And I think I quit my job the year before COVID, and boy, am I happy I did, because I think I would have murdered somebody if I was working retail during COVID. And I think it's just, I think, when we see situations like this happening, I'm like, this is not a time to be sad. It's a time to celebrate a freedom and to there's that opportunity.
I've spent too much of my life working for people who valued money over people, and I promised myself earlier this year that was never going to be the case ever again. I would never be part of an organization that values dollars or pounds over people and their lives. So, I've been talking to people I know, figuring stuff out. I've got plans in action at the moment.
Plans.
Right. Well, it's not just plans. I mean, I've been working pretty hard for the last 3 weeks on making some of those plans start to become reality.
Exactly.
I've been working through commercial models and business plans and all that kind of stuff. But I promised myself that anything I do is going to have to be inclusive, and is going to have to be, and I mean that like radically inclusive across the whole piece, not just for people who end up working with me but also for any products that we serve and the way that we do so. But it's also going to have to value people over money.
Yeah, of course, and I wish, like I said, I wish everyone could do what they dream to do. And unfortunately, like I said, I live in a town, in a country that's so much driven, where like housing prices, and it's just kind of crazy. And I was just like, maybe I should move to Spain. The housing prices seem to be cheaper there. Where are you in the UK, by the way?
I'm in Derby, which is in the East Midlands. It's kind of in the middle. It's the grey, rainy bit that doesn't really get much weather. There's lots of jokes here when like there's oh my god, there's floods around the country and it's awful. I mean, genuinely can be awful. And I'm like, oh, it's raining outside. And then it's like there's a drought and there's no water anywhere. And I'm like, oh, it's sunny for a change. So, we don't get much in the way of extremes here at all.
Right. When I visited, I was in Watford.
Okay.
And that was my first trip. And then I went back and I met someone in Edinburgh. And I was in Edinburgh for 2 weeks. And I was just like, I got to live here. This place, I love the UK in general. I grew
up in Birmingham, which I still consider home, and I spent most of my life there. And that really is the Midlands. So yeah, I've still got friends all around the country. I go visit and do stuff.
My big story with Edinburgh is that I went to Edinburgh at the end of November.
Yeah.
In 2013, it was just last week in November, first week of December. It never rained, which is, people say it was very unusual, but it was always moist. It was always, I would leave at like 8 in the morning, it'd be like 1 degree, and the ground was just wet. But I would always walk around with an umbrella, and at no point did I ever unfurl it. Like I was like, where is this rain? Like, why is the place just wet? And then we rented a Honda Fit, and we drove across around the Isle of Skye.
Yeah.
And the Isle of Skye in December, yes, but it also has a population of 4. I don't think anyone lives in Skye because, like I said, we could drive for 45 minutes on 1-lane roads and never see another person. We would go to the famous geological regions, and we'd be there completely alone, and it was just a fascinating thing. I always talk to people. There's this film called Stardust, which was shot in Skye, and I was just like, there are these 2 scenes that had the heroes and the villains in 2 different moments, and I'm like, I was standing where the camera is, and I know that this scene is shot here, and then the next scene showing the villain in a completely different location was simply picking the camera and then shooting in this scene because I know exactly what the locations are. I absolutely love it. I want to take the wife to the UK and to Ireland.
There's a friend of mine lives on the Isle of Skye, works for Halaska Whiskey, and that's like that there's not much there. There really isn't much there,
but yeah, but thanks a lot. Thank you, Faith, for talking. And send me those links. I want to send people's links to your project you have on GitHub, to these other tools that people can use. And hopefully maybe we'll have another conversation with Paco. We can talk more about stuff you wanted to talk about. I hope this was stimulating to you.
Yeah, I mean, at some points I'll be like, hey, I've got stuff to announce now about what I'm doing with my life, and I'd love to talk to you about it.
Yeah, exactly. But we can stop alluding to things and talk about them, and then I can go, oh, that's what you were talking about, that we were constantly alluding to, and people who think that I know, I don't know. She's not telling me, I don't know, I'm not going to ask. So when she finally reveals it, it'll be a shock to me. But thank you, Faith, for spending time with us, and I can't wait to do it again.
Thank you very much, Chris.
All right.